you're an employer thinking about wanting to attract talent in that age range, or people who are parents of older kids, and if having that diversity of perspective at your company is important to you, I think it has to be one of the things that you're thinking about and making very purposeful choices about.
That was Stephanie Wallstrom, Senior Director here at Penta Strategy, talking about paid parental leave. This is an important issue that we tackled this week on What's at Stake. I'm here with my colleague, Andrea Christensen. Andrea, this was your idea to have this podcast, so I'll tee it up for you. Why is this such an important issue?
Well, I just got back from parental leave for the second time a couple of weeks ago.
Top of mind.
Very top of mind. And it's not just top of mind personally and for individuals, but also for a lot of companies right now who are thinking about recruiting, retention, and generally the role that paid parental leave plays in economic growth as well.
Great. And we dove into all of that. It was a pretty fun conversation. Our colleague Rustin also joined us, who is literally on leave now.
On leave right now.
But was kind enough with his time, which we do not try to intrude on too much. But I really enjoyed this conversation. I think all of our listeners are going to enjoy it. So here's our episode. Welcome to another episode of What's at Stake, a Penta podcast. I'm your host, Brian DeAngelis, and I'm here today with several of my colleagues, Andrea Christensen, Stephanie Wallstrom, and Rustin Finkler. And we're here to talk about an important issue, which is parental leave and flexibility for parents, an important topic for a lot of employers and recruiters and others, and certainly for parents. So first, Andrea, Stephanie, Rustin, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All of you are relatively new parents, and all four of us are parents of kids of different ages. I'm going to jump right into it. Let's open it up. What was your experience with parental leave? What was it like, and how did that go for you?
I feel like Rustin should answer. He's on day 3.
I guess that is. I should have mentioned that in the intro. Rustin, you are on parental leave now. So yes, why don't you jump in first?
Not being forced to do this.
Not being forced. We appreciate the time.
Not being forced, definitely a topic that is near and dear to my heart as well. This is now the second time that I have gone on parental leave. I think from an experience standpoint, it's incredibly important, especially in our household, to establish those new routines that are really important as we embarked on having our second child. So our first child was definitely suffering in many ways from only child syndrome. So we were definitely looking forward to establishing new routines as a family of 4 as opposed to a family of 3. And so as someone who's now 3 days into that journey, it's been very exciting times over here as we figure out what that new course of action looks like.
One of you can jump in. Tell us if we have any volunteers. What was it like to take your leave? How was that experience at work? We work in a pretty high intense environments, and we work in communications, which I like to tell people never takes a break. So what was that like to actually take the break?
Well, I'll jump in because I just got back from leave at the beginning of September, and then I'd love to hear Stephanie's take. And I've done leave twice at Hamilton Place and what is now Penta. And one, I think it's super important. I loved being at home. I felt like with our organization, I fully checked out. I got off of all team emails. I turned off alerts on my phone. And I really took the time and invested to have like one job. Right. At that point, and that was to take care of my family. And, but I will say that there's fear and there's guilt and there's all of these things in taking that leave that you're like, am I going to not be important? Am I going to be so checked out from my clients, from my colleagues, that it's going to be hard to transition back in? And what I'd say is that all those feelings are natural and you're going to have them, but it's also going to be fine. So on the one hand, you're probably not as important as you think you are, but on the other, you have a role and it's important, and it's there for you when you get back. And to not try to work while you're on leave because you're never going to get this time back. Yeah. Steph, what did you experience?
No, I agree with that. So I have one son, he's 11 months old now, so I wasn't on maternity leave all that long ago, but it also feels like a lifetime ago and a blur. Just, sleep deprivation and it's like all those things. But no, I wasn't totally sure what to expect. So it was my first time taking leave of any kind, really longer than a week or two vacation. So you really don't know how to prepare for it. But I was totally able to unplug from work, focus on my family, and then feel really welcomed in coming back and supported with that transition.
And I think to maybe put a little spin on Andrea's answer, I think we bring a team environment to it. So there's people here willing to pick up the slack, mm-hmm. and you are very important, Andrea. We did miss you on your leave, but hopefully myself and others filled the gap, and then there was a spot for you to jump right back into, whether it's old clients or new clients. You're so important. We couldn't wait for you to come back.
Oh yeah, so appreciate that.
But let's maybe zoom out a little bit, and you all talked about your experiences, but why do you all think as professionals now access to parental leave matter for employees as they're looking for new jobs or in their career thinking of families?
Yeah, I mean, I know later in this conversation we're going to get into some of the kind of macroeconomic reasons for paid leave, some of the reasons employers need to be thinking about this from a talent recruitment and attracting talent perspective. But maybe just to answer this first, just on a very human and personal level, I mean, there's a ton of evidence out there about the benefits that paid parental leave have when it comes to the health and well-being of a baby and their parents. So, I mean, when parents have access to leave, studies, show they're more likely to stick to recommended schedules for doctor's visits and vaccine schedules and things like that. When it's a woman who's physically given birth, that time to physically recover, and also for mental and emotional health. There's links with paid leave and lower postpartum depression. And I think there's some intuitive social and emotional benefits to having time for new parents to bond with their child and as a family, as Rustin was talking about, figure out your new normal as a larger family. So I think it's a really special time. As Andrea said, it's not time you get back. It also can be a really difficult time for a lot of families.
Yeah.
So I think not just as a worker, but as a person, I value having time to focus on that and just think it's really important.
And I'll just jump in here too, because I think this leads into the bigger economic kind of piece of this. And so there's a ton of research. Richard Reeves from Brookings is out with this new book on men, and essentially, the economic growth in the U.S. over the past 3-4 decades has mostly been driven by women in the workforce.
That's right.
And that's an incredibly important point. And yet, women still tend to be the ones that do the most work in the home with the children. Shout out to my husband. He is an amazing partner, and I think it's getting better. I really do. But parental leave for both men and women is incredibly important, both from a retention, having women come back after leave, continuing to be a part of the workforce. And then also, I think it's so important for men to take their leave when it's offered and to take it to the full extent. And I'd love Rustin to jump in here, because I think that also helps this trend towards equalization of the labor division at home too, which helps women also. So I don't know, Rustin, what's your kind of take on all that?
Yeah, I think, Andrea, you hit it right on the head around kind of the equality piece of at home. And I think in many ways, when you've juxtaposed kind of my experiences with paternity leave versus even my parents' experience with a very similar sort of topic, when my dad was working, paternity leave didn't exist for him. And I think looking back retroactively when I talk to him today, there's definitely obvious gaps that existed within care at home because of that. And the burden obviously disproportionately fell on my mom versus my dad.
Right. And
so when you think about this kind of from an equality perspective, I think it's absolutely essential and important for both members of the household to be kind of equal partners in this, and parental leave gives men in particular an opportunity to kind of fill that gap that has existed previously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Andrea, I'd like to bounce back to you on just one more of those points. So you're head of our recruitment efforts here at HPS, and I don't know the statistics, maybe you do, but we probably recruit a lot of people in that prime, like marriage, starting a family age. They're coming off the hill or whatever. They're in their late 20s, early 30s. This can be a really important benefit as we look to especially recruit women, but across the board for new employees.
Yeah, no, and it really is. And I think what's been amazing is as we've grown as an organization, we've had more and more parents with young children join the company. And I think there's a lot that can be learned from that. Whether that's making like the pumping room more comfortable or whatever that may be, that's important, and we have more voices as a part of that. And what I also think has been really unique here is that the dads have taken the full leave.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think that is an incredibly important signaling effect to others that it is okay, it's good, it's important, and being a dad is equally important as being a mom, and that I think is really important.
And I hope it goes without saying, but it's strongly encouraged around the office. Like there's no issue with dads taking their leave. They're really pushed to go take your full leave. And again, apologies for Rustin and making him come on a podcast during his leave, but we know how excited he was to do it. So we're glad to have him. Let me switch gears a little bit. So there's obviously a lot of debate around, I don't know how much of a debate there is anymore about the importance of parental leave, but like, what does that actually look like? And the U.S., I think it's fair to say, has been behind other countries in terms of, the full leave policies, paid leave. This comes up as a topic in Congress and administrations every couple of years. Rustin, I know you've done a little bit of work on this. What have you seen kind of across the world in terms of the different options and what seems to have worked well for some economies versus others?
Yeah, it's a great question, Brian. I think first, just to level set here in the United States. So if you actually look, the Bureau of Labor Statistics put out some data not too long ago that actually only 23% of private employers here in the United States offer some sort of parental leave. So just from an even scene setting perspective, parental leave is not kind of something that has been seen across all private employers, something that's offered. And when you juxtapose that with the rest of the world, it's even kind of more startling. Obviously, our friends across the pond in Europe, in particular in the EU countries, by law, at least 4 months of parental leave must be given from all employers, both private and public. And again, if you go even deeper into Europe, into the Nordic countries, you're talking, countries that have variety of different parental leave policies, some as much as 6 months to a year, depending on if this is the birth of the first child or different children after that. And again, I think really interestingly, another country outside of Europe going kind of further across when we go to Asia is Japan has taken kind of a really interesting approach when it comes to parental leave for the fathers. And that was something I was really interested in looking at. So in Japan, it's 1 year is given to parental leave for all first-time fathers. So again, when you kind of see this comparison between the United States and kind of our other countries who are in a similar economic situation that we are here, it could not be more night and day. And I think as far as kind of where we've landed generally when it comes to private employers here in the U.S. that do offer parental leave, it typically falls somewhere in that 12 to 16 weeks, kind of varying across different employers. But again, we've seen even some employers really struggle with figuring out what is the exact amount of parental leave that should be given. Right. And I think, again, there's been some debates at some large corporations, thinking out loud here, Google and Gates have really been companies that have tried to figure out where exactly does the threshold that fits well for their corporate environment. And again, they've kind of landed somewhere in that 6 month range. So I guess to answer your question, Brian, holistically is, the U.S. tends to be a little bit further behind in comparison to some of our peers and countries. But again, we're still trying to figure out, even from the private employer perspective, really what is the sweet spot for what parental leave should look like.
Yeah. And the private sector is really kind of taking the lead on this in the absence of anything from the federal government. I want to take a quick break, but I wanted to throw in some fun questions in this episode as well. So you're all three of you are new parents. What advice would you give for someone about to start their leave?
I think planning ahead of time, both for the work part of your leave, making sure your colleagues feel work's been transitioned, that they're going to be well supported with what they need to chip in. As Andrea said, we have a team model here. So I know, speaking from my perspective, I was really grateful to all of my teammates who stepped in to make sure our clients continued to get great service and great work when I was gone and not able to contribute. And so I think that work to support them enables then, you to take full advantage of that leave, and everyone can feel well supported in their roles, and you can really just focus on what you're there to focus on.
Yeah, and I'm going to pepper in the personal advice with something we haven't talked about, which is access to high quality, affordable childcare,
yes.
which is essential. But thinking about what are you going to do when you come back to work, and are you going to do a nanny share? Are you going to do childcare? Do you have family who can help? Like, what does that look like? Are you going to stack your leave with your with the second parent? What does that look like? And having a plan for that, because that leave, whether it's 12 weeks or 4 months, 6 months, it does go by fast, and you think you've got this time to plan, but there's wait lists, there's all this stuff. So think about it while you're still pregnant, before you have to worry about keeping a human alive, and try to come up with a plan that's going to work. And what I did this time, which I know that I'm pretty lucky to be able to have done, but I was able to put both my kids into their daycare for 2 weeks, understand what our mornings would look like, try to have like my brain turn back to work a little bit.
Right.
And that I think really helped prepare me to come back.
And I'd say, I know we're both Emily Oster fans, but she's got lots of great advice as you're trying to make those decisions, and just think about, what's important. How does your family work? What's important to you and your partner and your family, in making some of those decisions about childcare or other things that are going to work best for you.
Read the last chapter in Crib Sheet.
Yeah,
we didn't read it till the end, but it's like, oh yeah, all the internal politics, that's important too.
Yeah, it is a good point. I mean, it's been years since I took leave, but when I took my first leave, really helping me think about, to the work point you made, Andrea, but also like, what kind of father do I want to be? And I know that sounds like a pretty big topic to take on, but more of like, I had come off the hill working 12 hours a day, 6-7 days a week. And it was like that period of time where I started to think about, okay, do I want to be that dad that's home every night for dinner? Do I want to be the coach of the baseball team? And really using that time to kind of reconfigure how your family unit's going to be.
And Brian is the coach.
I was going to say.
We're going to talk more about coaching. Yeah. I'm trying to restrict myself from bringing it up every time. But Rustin, any words of advice before we take a quick break?
Brian, I think you took what I was going to say right out of my mouth, which is trying to build kind of a foundation for how your family unit is going to run and operate moving forward. I think in any given situation, whether you're going from 2 people to 3 or 3 to 4, obviously that new individual takes a lot of work, and how you will operate around that individual schedule, I think, is something that you definitely want to keep in mind as you either are thinking about coming back to work or when that date gets closer.
Awesome. Great. Well, this has been a great start to the conversation. I want to come back and talk a little bit more about where we go after leave and some of the policies here, even at Penta, and that we've seen elsewhere. So let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back on What's at Stake.
Penta is the world's first comprehensive stakeholder solutions firm. We are a one-stop shop for the intelligence and strategy leaders need to assess a company's reputation and make decisions that improve their positioning. as executives in the C-suite must account for a growing set of engaged stakeholders, all with distinct, fast-changing demands, Penta provides real-time intelligence and strategy solutions. We work with clients solving complex global challenges across a variety of industries. Our clients span technology, financial services, energy, healthcare, and more. To learn more about how Penta can support your company, check out our website at pentagroup.co, our Twitter at pentagrp, or find us on LinkedIn at Penta Group.
We're back on What's at Stake. And again, I'm here with my colleagues, Andrea, Stephanie, and Rustin. We're talking about parental leave. And we started this conversation in the last segment, but you all have taken leave as employees at Penta or Hamilton Boyce Strategies previously, something I haven't been done. So maybe, Andrea, starting with you, what has that experience been like here, and how has that helped you?
Yeah, and I've done it both as in two roles. I did it as a managing director, and I took leave as a partner as well. And so the roles and responsibilities are different in each of those, but I would say that both times I was able to fully check out and fully focus on my family. But I do think that it's important that you're intentional about planning for yourself and being your own advocate, as is in everything in life. I spend a lot of time thinking through who should take ownership of these teams when I'm gone, and working with our staffing team to make sure that could happen, having individual conversations with people, and making sure that I spoke to all of the clients that I was the direct point of contact for, so that they were aware that everything was going to be well in hand. And doing that kind of preparation really enables you to check out. And it's kind of like people would call, say, hey, what's up? Or like come by and see the baby. But it was mostly, how are you? What's going on with you? How's being a parent? And nothing really work related. And so I just really appreciate that. Obviously, I don't know anything else because I've done it here. But I've talked to people who feel like they don't get that kind of that time.
Yeah. I will say, as someone who's been on the other side of those conversations with you, I've always felt very prepared. I think I subbed in for one or two of your clients, and you did such a great job of like handing off to the client and making sure people were prepared, that we never felt the need to, oh my God, only Andrea knows this information, or how do we chase her down? And to your second point, I worked somewhere else 11 years ago when I took leave, and that was not the case. It was a smaller firm, to give them some credit, but I left and I got a phone call about every 3 days, and you deal with it and you move through it. But it's nice, I think, here that we have an environment where people kind of have each other's back a little bit more and are well prepped for those moments.
Yeah.
How much do you think parental leave really matters to people looking for new jobs? Like, how we always talk about benefits, from vacation to healthcare to transportation. I won't ask you for a number, but where do you guys think this ranks in terms of importance?
So I have to jump in here, because it depends at what stage of life you are at.
Fair.
Very much, because I also remember when I was 24 and had no intention of being married or becoming a parent anytime soon, and you'd see people like have to leave. Like, why can't they do a meeting at 5:30? Why can't they be in the office at 8:30? And then as a parent, you're like, wow, I totally understand that. And so your perspective, I think, shifts a lot at different stages of life. So my answer is it depends. But as you're starting to think about that, I think it becomes increasingly important.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I'm thinking back to, earlier jobs, and you kind of skim past that page of the employee benefits when you're thinking about an offer, because you don't feel like it applies to you in that moment. But I mean, obviously, anyone who's in a similar stage of life to the one I'm in, and if you're an employer thinking about wanting to attract talent in that age range, or people who are parents of older kids, and if having that diversity of perspective at your company is important to you, I think it has to be one of the things that you're thinking about and making very purposeful choices about.
Yeah.
One conversation. Jump in, Rustin, please.
And using myself, I think even in many ways to make the point a little bit further is, when I was first at my last job and then we had our first child, I can say that parental leave was in my top 5 benefits that I really looked at. And then transitioning over to HPS, now Penta, I would say definitely parental leave was in like the top 3 things, maybe up there with healthcare as one of the seminal things really looking for from an employer package. So I think to Andrea, to your point, kind of depending, but as people shift in their kind of life cycles, I think it becomes a more and more important employee benefit.
It's also, to me, a signal of how that employer thinks about their talent generally, even if it's not a benefit I plan to take. I do think that's a signal to me about how an employer is thinking about talent broadly, even if that wasn't a benefit I was personally planning on taking.
Yeah, and I think kind of earlier when Rustin was talking about the different times that different companies or countries and things mandate, I also think that there's a personal element that no one's ever going to get it perfectly right. Like there is probably a sweet spot range, but I know people who've taken 12 weeks of leave and been like, I'm not ready to go back. I need more time. And others who are like, get me back into the office. I want adult conversation now. Yeah. And so I think that there is an element of flexibility probably needed when we think about it, because to me personally, taking 6 months would be too long for me. I mean, I would love it if my second were sleeping through the night right now, but that's not a reality.
It's a different 6 months.
But I do think that as we talk about this, should everyone provide 6 months? I don't know that works for everyone, because someone might not want to take that 6 months, particularly depending where they are in their career path, and they might want to engage in, are they going to be judged for not taking the full time? Right. So I think that there's a little bit of back and forth that as the U.S. catches up probably in these conversations that are probably worth having.
Yeah. And I think this actually tees up the next part of the conversation, which I had, which is the leave itself it is the starting line of your family life. So then you come back from leave, your kids don't disappear, right? And Stephanie, you just made a really good point. What an employer does for parental leave, I think, is often a signal of how they approach work-life balance and where flexibility comes in. And that's true for everybody. But as you all adjust to work after leave, talk about some of there are definitely issues of childcare and other stuff, but how flexibility helps in those situations and how it moves kind of your career forward.
Yeah, this is something I was thinking about a little bit in thinking about this conversation, but what all these different parental leave, paid leave structures and what's the right length of time, what they all have in common is that eventually you come back to work and you still have a new child and you're trying to figure out how to have a successful career at the same time, or 2 or 3 or more. So that it can't be the start and end of the conversation. And so I think, when companies are out there thinking about how they can support and retain employees who are parents, it's not just about parental leave. I think you mentioned culture, which I'll get to come to in a moment, but there's other benefits to think about too, whether that's, I take use of our company's dependent care FSA, for example, to help make, childcare, which is very expensive in DC, a little more affordable, flexibility, whether you're coaching your kid's baseball team as Brian is, or if you need to stay home with a sick kid or navigate school pickup or anything else. I think the other point really is around culture. And I think, part of what we've talked about is our own experiences adjusting to coming back to work. And I think one of the things that made my personal reentry very smooth is the support I feel like I had from my managers and peers, especially the parents who had modeled for me how to navigate being both a parent and a colleague. And I think there's probably many workplaces out there where someone might feel like they need to kind of tone down talking about their parental commitments for fear that they would be sidelined or not seen as serious about their career. I've never felt that way here, or that I would have fewer opportunities at Penta because I took my full leave and because I prioritized my family. And that's in part because I watched managers and peers, especially men, be unabashed in saying, hey, I can't do a meeting at that time because that's bath time for my kids, or because I'm going to go coach football. And that made me feel like I had permission then to do that too. So I think people don't always fully appreciate just how that kind of quiet modeling of how you can try to balance both, how much of an impact that has on younger parents like me.
That's such an important point, Stephanie, because also I should note that at Penta, we're in person.
Yes, that's a great point.
The office is open 5 days a week. There are people in the office 5 days a week. I was reading the other day that really only 5% of employers who are requiring people to be back in person have 5 days a week. And so that sounds, I think, kind of aggressive to some people, but the way that we're structured, we want maximum in-person collaboration, but we also want maximum flexibility. So, as we've thought about what our approach is going to be post-pandemic, a lot of this has to do with we want to maximize flexibility for people. If we're saying you have to be in the office Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, then what if your electrician or your air conditioning breaks on a Wednesday and you need to stay home? Or what if your kid's sick on a Wednesday? On a Wednesday. And those are things that I think from the culture of our organization, we want people to be able to be flexible and take a day where they need to take a day and work remote, and that's okay. And so I think it's an unconventional approach that we're taking that isn't like a lot of companies, but I find it, especially as like a reentry new mom for the second time, that it's been working very well for me.
Yeah. And it is something we, on the consulting side of our business, we share with our clients. And as they come to us asking for advice on not necessarily their HR policies, but like how to navigate these debates, pointing to our examples of like maximizing flexibility. We do want people in the office, but like whether it's your kid sick or whether it's your electrician, like you have the same flexibility, like go take care of what you need to take care of at home, log in when you can. We now live in this world where you can do it by Zoom if you have to do it by Zoom, or if you can be here and be part of the team.
Yeah.
I'm going to throw a little bit of a curveball to Rustin, but on that last point about clients, we also see a lot of parental leave happening on the client side. And Rustin, you and I have had a few examples. We'll leave our client's name out of it, but I think it's another good point of how, we work not only internally, but externally as a client lead needs to take time off, how we can fill a gap. We've even gone so far as secondments to different companies to help fill those moments where there is leave. And then our approach to flexibility, kind of helping clients back. So Rustin, I'll throw it to you. Any thoughts on kind of the client side too, and how we work with folks on their end?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, Brian. I think from the client side perspective, in many ways, to Stephanie's point, both they are modeling for us and we are modeling for them, I think, on kind of the approach to how parental leave should be taken. And I think from some of our clients' perspectives, parental leave is a really very important key element to kind of their personal growth and professional growth, potentially at the organizations that they're at. And so I think in many ways it's a two-way street. So I think from the Penta side, we have taken the approach, which I think everyone has now heard about, that parental leave is kind of an important element and piece to the puzzle. And I think to many of our clients, they see that as well. So that's how I see it, Brian.
Perfect. I'm going to end. This has been a great conversation, but I'm going to end with one more fun question. And Rustin just reminded me of it. We had a baby off the other day on a Zoom meeting where one of our directors had his baby in his arms and had to console the baby, I guess, and was talking. At the same time, one of our clients took his camera and put it back on as he was holding his baby, and we had this nice little moment. So this happens now in our kind of quasi-hybrid world. What's your best advice when the kid runs into your home office or jumps on the Zoom with you? How do you guys handle that?
My take would be, I think you just kind of have to own it. I do think it's a little less taboo because of the pandemic when so many, people were working from home with their kids. It's maybe a little less taboo than it was a couple of years ago. I'm sure people remember that viral video of the guy doing the BBC News interview from a few years ago, and his toddler is hilariously marches into the background, and there's this scramble behind him to get the kid out of the office. I mean, I remember in 2020 being on Zoom calls with both Andrea and Brian, actually, with their very cute kids making the occasional appearance.
Yes,
and you just kind of, I think people kind of get that it's a reality. I was at home with my son recently. He was sick and I had to do a call, and I just kind of warned people, hey, there might be some baby babbling in the background. And sure enough, he takes that opportunity to start singing. And
Jump right in there, yeah.
I think people get it. And I think if you just own it and try to do your best, I think people understand.
Good. Well, I'll give you guys one thing to look forward to, which is my 8-year-old has now taken to just writing me notes. So he knows to stay right behind the monitor and slips me little pieces of paper. Can I play video games? Check yes or no. It's adorable, but
That's brilliant.
Any final thoughts before we wrap up? Anything you guys want else? Well, I appreciate you guys all joining. This has been a great topic, an important topic, and we had some fun with it and some good stories, but raised a lot of, I think, important issues. So Andrea, Stephanie, Rustin, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Brian.
And to all our listeners, thank you for tuning into another episode of What's at Stake, a Penta podcast. Please like and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts, and you can follow us on Twitter @PentaGRP. I'm your host, Brian DeAngelis. I'll see you again next week.